commence our meeting of the ESPO Finance and Audit Subcommittee today. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's meeting, and the meeting will be broadcast live on YouTube, and it will also be available for viewing after the meeting. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. And I need to let you know we're not expecting a fire alarm today. If one does sound, please use the stairs to leave the building and convene on the field opposite the visitors' car park, please. And could we please at that stage follow the Head of Democratic Services. We have received apologies from Councillor Shayla when we go to from Cambridge. Our first item at number 1 is our minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November 2024, pages 3 to 6 of the agenda pack. Could I have a proposer and seconder to accept that? We move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest they wish to declare? And at item 3, I can advise there are no urgent items. Item 4 is our first report on the agenda of the Internal Audit Service progress against the 2024-25 Internal Audit Plan. And Matt Davis, our Audit Manager at Leicestershire County Council, will present his progress update on pages 7 to 18 of the agenda pack. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just going straight into the paper then, on page 7, it's the routine progress against the plan report, the plan that was approved at this committee this time last year, 14th for 24. Paragraphs 5 to 8, I'm not going to dwell on because we talk about them regularly, about our assurance levels being full, substantial, partial and little, and how that then plays out in terms of if there's a high importance recommendation, we'd follow up and retest and bring to the committee. Which brings me nicely on to actually paragraph 9. I'm very pleased to say there are no high importance recommendations and no legacy high importance recommendations from the work we've concluded to date, which is really good news, obviously. Now moving on to the actual coverage then. Paragraph 10 of the pack at the bottom of page 8 summarises this position very nicely, in as much as at the previous committee last October, we reported that we completed all our work that straddled 2 financial years. So as you'd expect, that was completed very quickly. And then moving on to our 24-25 coverage. As at the date of publication of this report, we'd completed 11 audits through to final report stage, all of which have got substantial assurance, where they've got an opinion rating. We had one more that was at a draft report stage, and that remains at a draft report stage. And then we've got 9 that are at various stages of work in progress. And the work in progress, I break down further in paragraph 11, purposely with it being 9 pieces. And just to give you a flavour of that, 3 of them mean they continue throughout the whole of the financial year, so they won't actually be concluded until the 31st of March. 2 of them actually naturally straddle 2 financial years or over the financial year. And of the 4 remaining ones, they're either due to be undertaken in the final quarter, predominantly due to things like sample sizes or project completion dates, or they're timetabled around changes to legislative requirements such as the Procurement Act. Just to give a flavour though, we'd say 9 pieces of work in progress, but if I was to move forward, which I don't do for the purpose of this report, but just to give a flavour that things are moving okay, there's another one, the enterprise resource planning piece of work that's now in a final report stage as well. So we're down to 8 and moving down as you'd expect at this time of year. So the final quarter is always our busiest quarter with ESPO. Paragraph 12 indicates that we're reasonable assurance that we're on track to deliver before the 31st of March. I say reasonable because you only know what you know. You know, if there's suddenly any happenings, any illnesses, severe illnesses, anything like that. But I'm reasonably assured that we'll be able to complete the plan. I'm fairly confident. So really, in concluding and recapping on what is very much a whistle-stop tour, we're on track with the 24-25 plan and have made good progress. Importantly for this committee as well, everything at the minute has got substantial assurance, so there are currently no high importance recommendations to bring to the committee's attention. So it really is at this stage of the year a good news report, to be honest. I'm happy to take any questions, or Neil will as well. Thank you.
Any questions from members to Matt or Neil regarding this?
I haven't really got any questions, Chair. Just to say, really pleased to note that there's no high or legacy recommendations, and that you're on track for the 31st of March. So well done.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Matt. And obviously, we do appreciate that some of them naturally straddle the 2 financial years, so it's the natural conclusion that they would do that this time as well. So I think that's given us the assurance we need in terms of the timing of the outstanding items. So thank you once again. Thank you. So we have the recommendations, which I move that the committee notes the progress update received for the 2024-25 plan, and notes that there is no high importance recommendations within the committee's domain. Seconder, President Secretary, thank you, Councillor Wright. Seconder, please. If we can move on to agenda item 5, and this is the agenda item regarding the annual internal audit plan for 25-26 and plans for implementing the new internal auditing standards. So Neil Jones, the head of internal audit and assurance at Leicestershire County Council, will introduce this report along with Matt, who we've just heard from, and that is in pages 19 to 40 of our pack. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's typically at this time of the year, it's a bit of a double act for Matt and I, 2 for the price of 1. So I'm just going to give you the context of the internal audit plan, then Matt will explain the detail, and then I'll come back in and explain about the standards. So paragraphs 4 and 5 really just explain that we are currently working to what are known as the public sector internal audit standards. All of your constituent councils will be working to those as well, your auditors there. And it's part of those standards that requires me to produce an annual plan that can effectively form an opinion at the end of the year. So it's an annual plan now, but it will form an opinion at the end of 2026 on the control environment for ESPO. So that's your processes of governance, risk management and internal control. So we've compiled the plan under the old standards. Those new standards will change, and that's when I'll come back into the report. Thank you.
Neil, questions for Neil, please.
Want me to continue on?
Sorry, Chair. I should have said, can I pass over to Matt now? Sorry. It's not quite as seamless as it has been in the past.
Yeah, moving on then to paragraphs 7 to 11 of the report, that it's important to note, I think, the consultation process that actually takes place. It's a robust process that involves speaking to the director and ESPO leadership team, the consortia treasurer and secretary, obviously Neil, the staff within our team, and those conversations sort of focus predominantly on key and emerging risks, plan changes and potential issues, as well as cyclical audits that we've already mentioned, straddle financial years or require future revisit. Other parts of the methodology that are important to note are, obviously, we take into account anything from the external auditor's report, sort of material control weaknesses, ESPO's risk register and risk process, which I know there's a paper coming up on this committee as well. Part of the work involves updating our 5-year strategic plan for ESPO, looking at the risk registers and adjusting them, making sure all key risks are being tackled over this 5-year rolling plan. We identify areas for future years, and we also look at the emerging risks on a local and national level through things like the Institute of Internal Auditors Risk in Focus reports and the National Risk Register, etc., which bring about things like, just as a simple example, cyber security and data security. And obviously we've got an element in there for cyber. There are other ones that I could map across, but I won't do unless you wanted any detail on that. We also, as part of the plan, obviously review the governance arrangements, including the role of the committee, the management committee and the chief officer group papers, and also the governance statements and financial accounts. So there's a lot of work that goes into the planning of conducting research for the plan. Having explained that methodology, then paragraphs 12 to 15 refer to the plan itself, and they form the appendix 1 on page 27. In addition to all the work above, ensuring we tackle the right areas at the right times, I'm also so confident that the plan provides for a wide scope of audits, varying audits, addresses the 3 main areas the head of audits required to give an opinion on, i.e. the governance, the risk management and the internal control within the organisation. Hot topics such as cyber, current events such as application of the revised procurement regs, and areas specific to the type of organisation, so things like rebates and benchmarking. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear it includes elements of counter-fraud coverage within it, and indeed we're going to look at counter-fraud risk assessment with ESPO management aligned with the SIPFA Code of Practice of managing the risk of fraud and corruption this year, and then from that we'll look at a specific counter-fraud audit. I think it also provides good coverage of potential financial and IT risks, but importantly, I've also kept back an element of the plan for both contingency and for any emerging issues. So we've got a degree of flexibility even before we think about any substitute jobs if we need it. Finally, before I hand over to Neil to talk about implementing the new global standards, paragraphs 16 to 18, I know you're all aware of this, but just as a reminder, talk about who we progress the plan with, and really that can be summarised how we progress the plan. We agree the terms of reference, we conduct our work, we talk through the findings, risks and recommendations that we think we're going to make, so there's no surprises, and we get it right first time where at all possible, and we know that if there's any, for example, there's any control measures that we weren't aware of, so we talk about that as well. We then produce a draft, and as you'd expect, we agree a final report, and we update stakeholders in the committee regarding the progress and any high importance recommendations. So that's really the nuts and bolts as to how we actually follow the plan forward and get it through during the financial year. I'll hand back to Neil now, who's going to talk to you about the global standards, global internal audit standards. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks again, Matt. Yeah, so like earlier, within your own authorities, your heads of audit will be busy beavering away implementing new standards, and from paragraph 19 onwards just explains the plans in place we've got at Leicestershire to replace the current public sector standards with global standards, and provides an update on 2 consultations that I brought to the committee on 2 documents in the November subcommittee. So paragraph 21 really explains that about the application note. So the application note is a document that effectively bridges the old standards to the new standards, and it contains requirements for things that you'd expect in the public sector. So it still continues the requirements for governance statements, head of audit opinions, which has been talking about Matt there, and also for heads of audit to be qualified. So they're not in the global standards, but they've been brought forward and bridged over into the UK application note. Paragraph 22, just really that to explain that the conformance to the new standards not going to happen overnight. It's a bit of a roadmap over a longer time, and there's quite a few new standards that we'll need to build in training requirements for. Paragraph 24, there's also a requirement in these new standards to just compile and or in some places revise some key governance documents relating to internal audit by the 1st of April. And because of the early timing of this committee, it's not been able to do that as yet. So what I'm seeking from the subcommittee, is a delegation to agree any changes on those with key officers, then report back. Paragraph 25 is another key document that's been introduced as part of this exercise, and it's a nationwide code of practice for the governance of internal audit in local government, and the accounting body SIPFA saw that as a requirement to ensure that we were mapping how audit committees work in local government. So, for instance, the use of elected members, which is not in the global standards. And then finally, that code has now been published, it wasn't published at the time I wrote this report, so I need to discuss its content. There have been some changes. I don't know to what degree they affect any of the relationships, but I'll be discussing that again with key officers and we'll report back to the subcommittee. I think that's all I've got to say, Chair. Thank you. Take questions on both parts of that.
Thank you, Neil. I'll open it up to questions from the members. That's right.
Thank you. I don't know why, when I went through the paper, I've written down, when did we have our last external quality assessment? I think,
we had it in the spring of 2024 by a independent objective assessor. What's the name of the company? Can you remember? We did report on it, didn't we? In probably the November committee, was it? Would have been a paragraph, but the outcome and hold on to your hats was generally conforms, which is pretty demoralising. But it's the top rating. It's the top rating. So Matt did a heck of a lot of work on that and getting that. So we're working in tandem with any actions that came out of that. That's got to be fed into these new standards as well. So it's a gap analysis of new standards to old standards, plus a bridging with that as well. So yeah.
Just following up, I think you covered most of it in what you were saying, but on the SIFA paper that's highlighted, I think it's page 33 or page 6 of theirs, there was 5 questions that they put out, some suggested questions for the audit committee members to ask of you. And as I say, I think you've covered most of them. And my question to you is, are you confident that you've answered all those questions and you're happy with it?
What steps have been taken? I've answered that. We're on a timeline. It's a strange one because you needed to wait for the guidance to come through to start your timeline, if you like, so things we're doing. Do we have the support it needs from the organisation? Certainly, we've never had any problems with having support in terms of things like that. Do we have concerns about achieving conformance? As you look at the standards themselves, we achieved our conformance there. I don't think we're going to have too many. There's going to be some new standards that we're going to have to learn how to, we're going to implement those. So yeah, what can the audit committee do to support internal audit with the transition? The document I just referred to that was only released last week, the code of practice, that specifies quite a lot of responsibilities for the audit committee in terms of protecting the internal audit, making sure it's got access, making sure it's supported, making sure it's got sufficient resources. When will the committee next review its own effectiveness, including its own? I think that's probably the one that we might need to just build a little bit on in terms of a review of its own effectiveness. But
brilliant, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further questions for Neil before I ask a question myself? Neil, just as a general question, obviously these are recommendations that have come by SIPFA and government bodies, etc. But do you think some of that may have been driven by the public interest reports that have been in the news, or certainly the news and local government of late? Because I know there are certain training, additional training courses that have been offered, and the sort of group meetings and things from audit chairs to discuss things around this?
So if I'm honest, we've always had internal audit standards, and they were, quite stringent standards. I think when they revised the global standards by the Institute for Internal Auditors, SIPFA just thought, why don't we just adopt them and then we'll bridge between the two. So making, full conformance to those is very important. I think what you're touching on is more contained in the second document about the code of practice for governance. And I think that's where it tinges on a reflection back to other organisations that have failed, and parts of that failure have potentially been its audit committee, in terms of how much interest does it take in its internal audit function, does it support it? So I think that's where there's a crossover more than the standards themselves.
Thank you, Neil. Any further questions? I understand, Neil, we're going to have to leave us in a little while. Okay. Yes, fine. Thank you very much. Being no further questions, thank you. And Matt will stay with us. So all the best. Thank you once again. Thank you. So we have the recommendations on agenda item 5. So I move that the committee approves the ESPO internal audit plan for 25-26, and that we note the head of internal audit services plans for implementing the global internal audit standards in the UK public sector from the 1st of April 2025. And delegates approve of the internal audit strategy and the internal audit charter, and that is so that is a delegation to the director of ESPO and the consortium treasurer and secretary, following consultation with the chairman. That's acceptable. So I have a proposer and seconder. In favour? So if we could then move on to item 6, and this will be taken by Christian Smith, and it's regarding the contract procedure rules relating to the Procurement Act 2023, and obviously this is a topic we've touched on previously.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a relatively short report, and as you say, we have touched on it previously, but the purpose of the report is to formally seek approval from the Finance and Audit Subcommittee about adopting new contract procedure rules as a result of a new Procurement Act that goes live in 12 days' time. Leicestershire County Council and ESPO have developed a new single set of CPRs which will govern our procurements commencing from this date onwards, and a copy of these draft CPIs, which would be effective from the 24th of February, is attached as Appendix A. In terms of the governance angle, the approval of these CPRs is set out in the Constitution as the responsibility of the Management Committee. However, as you may recall, the Management Committee won't convene till after the Act goes live, and at the last Management Committee in November, they provided delegated authority to this subcommittee to be able to approve these CPRs. So, as I say, a short report, but it is recommended that the Finance and Audit Subcommittee approve the CPRs detailed in the appendix, which will govern procurements under the new Procurement Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Do I have any comments or questions for Christian regarding this? Obviously, it's something we've touched on several occasions previously. No, thank you. So in that case, I will move the recommendation that the committee approves the contract procedure rules, including in the appendix to the report, which governs the procurements under the Act. If that's okay. So if we can then move on to item 7, which is the date of our next meeting, which will be, in terms of the date of the next subcommittee meeting, will be the 8th of October 2025 here at County Hall at 10:30 a.m. Thank you. As previously said, I don't think we have any other urgent items to take at item 8. So we'll go on to item 9, which is the exclusion of the press and public. I move that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information. I have a first and second for that. Thank you. And we will wait for Rosemary.